joining me today. I'm Rhonda Livingston, National Education Leader at the Australian Children's Education and Care Quality Authority, also known as ACECQA. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which this presentation was developed, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people watching this presentation. These videos, which explore inclusion in practice, are based on a series of workshops conducted in 2018 and 2019. Thanks to my co-facilitators, my colleagues in inclusion agencies and regulatory authorities, and the input and interaction of more than 1,500 educators, we are able to share this knowledge with you. A quick check before we start. The workbook, which is an additional learning aid, should be downloaded. You'll find it here. It also has a comprehensive list of resources you may find useful to strengthen your current and ongoing learning. In this video, we'll get answers to some questions about inclusion. What is inclusion? How does the National Quality Framework support inclusion? And why is it integral to quality education and care practice? To start, what do you think about inclusion? And what is your experience of it? We all have our own understanding of inclusion based on our knowledge, experiences, and context, and where we are placed in our learning journey. The first page of your workbook includes some questions for your personal reflection. You may like to jot down some of your reflections on what is inclusion? Have you ever been excluded? How do you know if inclusion is working well? Take some time to consider these questions. There are no right or wrong answers, just your own perspectives and reflection. You may like to add to this page throughout the video, to share with colleagues, and also as a way of documenting evidence of your reflective practice. So what is inclusion? The approved learning frameworks, the Early Years Learning Framework and the Framework for School-Age Care, define inclusion as inclusion involves taking into account all children's social, cultural and linguistic diversity in curriculum or program decision-making processes. The intent is to ensure that all children's experiences are recognised and valued, and to ensure that all children have equitable access to resources and participation and opportunities to demonstrate their learning and to value difference. Inclusion is a practice, not a concept. It is not extra work. It is what services are required to do under all aspects of the National Quality Framework. It is about seeing and doing, embedding a strength-based, inclusive approach and actively practicing it. It's not just about looking or taking a deficit judgmental approach that promotes exclusion. The National Quality Framework, or NQF, has outcomes that support inclusion. Focused on holistic learning and development for all children, the NQF encourages us to provide each child with programs based on their current knowledge, strengths, ideas, culture, abilities and interests. The National Quality Framework recognises that each child has their own strengths and abilities. The NQF views children as capable, competent contributors to their world. The NQF uses the phrase each child, every child and all children deliberately to lead, influence and inspire the way we think about inclusion. It celebrates diversity, encouraging educators to create programs which keep children engaged and are supportive of the whole child. It empowers us to use strategies for teaching and learning which best suit every child, their family and the local community. Let's take a look at the National Quality Framework's guiding principles, which frame all of our work. These are: the rights and best interests of the child are paramount, children are successful, competent and capable learners, equity, inclusion and diversity underpin the framework. Australia's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures are valued. The role of parents and families is respected and supported, and best practice is expected in the provision of education and care services. Therefore, we can see how inclusion, equity and diversity underpin the framework. The National Quality Standard, or NQS, is also embedded with inclusive practices. The NQS promotes quality practice that is child-centred, involves responsive teaching and scaffolding, creates inclusive environments, utilises resources to support play-based learning, promotes access and participation, reflects community engagement, and fosters the development of professionals. These are quality education and care practices that are integral to quality inclusion practices. If you haven't already, please take a moment to download the Guide to the National Quality Framework, which you can do via the ACECQA website. The guide outlines the National Quality Standard, or NQS, assessment and rating process, and the operational requirements. It's very useful to support, and as it says, guide the development of your practice and understanding of the standards. The NQS talks about inclusion in Quality Area 3. You can take a look at it in detail, but to sum it up, your facilities need to be accessible and suitable to the service you provide. Aim to create an environment that is inclusive, promotes competence, and supports exploration and play-based learning. Ensuring that both outdoor and indoor areas support every child's participation. Inclusion is also addressed in Quality Area 6, which focuses on how collaborative partnerships enhance children's inclusion, learning and well-being. I would also suggest taking a look at the Quality Area 1 Educational Program and Practice. It outlines how decisions, reflections and planning in your service should build on the interests, abilities, cultural background and gender of all children. A summary of the 2018 NQS is also available in your workbook. Take a quick look now. On the ACECQA website, you'll also find a suite of resources to support your exploration of the NQS and the changes made in 2018. A further fun and interactive resource you may enjoy and find helpful is the ACECQA Quest for Quality knowledge game. The game explores the 7 quality areas of the National Quality Standard, facilitates the development of relationships through team-building activities and discussion starters, provides opportunities for you to integrate an element of fun into your professional development discussions and critical reflections, and can be downloaded for free or purchased via the ACECQA website. There is a separate inclusion extension pack available, along with other extension packs on environmental responsibility and 24-hour movement guidelines. In your workbook, you'll find an activity using the discussion starters from the Quest for Quality Inclusion extension pack. If you are listening to this presentation by yourself, choose 1 or 2 questions and spend 5 to 10 minutes to consider and jot down your response for sharing with your colleagues. If you are watching the presentation as a team or group, form a small group or pairs. Discuss your chosen question with your colleagues, identify challenges you may face at your service, and strategies and practices for inclusion and planning at your service. After 5 to 10 minutes, share your responses with the whole group. I encourage you to review all of the National Quality Standard with the inclusion lens. Additionally, your workbook has an activity which supports your service to critically reflect and assess how your program, practice and operations are inclusion ready. There are questions for each quality area. You may want to try the Quest for Quality questions as a discussion starter for your next staff meeting or reflective practice session. After watching this video and completing the activities in your workbook, I hope you now have an overview of how the National Quality Framework supports inclusion. In the next video, you will hear from an Australian government-funded inclusion agency. They will share with you how they provide tailored support to meet the needs of education and care services, discuss research and common myths and misunderstandings about inclusion, unpack strategic inclusion planning, and share an inclusion story from the sector. Thank you for joining me today and engaging in professional development to strengthen your inclusive practices.